Our hearing was scheduled to start at 6 o'clock, and we have those that are watching live streaming, so we're going to go ahead. I realize there may be a few more people come in as we're going. Before we get started, I want to just thank all of y'all for being here. Just let you know that the Joint Committee holds public hearings to receive suggestions and recommendations on how the Mississippi Legislature should redistrict itself and its 4 congressional districts. During the course of these hearings around the state, as chair, I give the members of the public an opportunity to address the committee and give any concerns or any suggestions that they might have concerning the redistricting efforts. By custom, we try to give members of the public a free opportunity to say what they wish in cases where it appears that there are going to be many persons who are to speak. We do limit their time. As to what limits we impose will be up to the chair depending on how many persons want to speak. I do just want to mention that we're here to take your comments and your suggestions. We're not here to answer questions. This will not be the only opportunity that you have to present your comments, but if you have something in writing that you want to leave with us, we'll be glad to do that. Or at appropriate time, I'll be giving addresses where you can mail in the comments or anything that you might have. Just as a brief reminder, just because there's maybe some confusion out there based on the number of inquiries we've had other places, just a reminder, we do not do county or municipal redistricting. And so we're going to make every effort to not split any precincts. We're going to split the very minimum we have to comply with the requirements of law. The vast majority of the split precincts that the public's going to face, and I know that's very frustrating to have any, because I've had a lot that I've had to deal with myself. But it will be because the county is going to move the precinct lines after we do our redistricting. It will not be because we're splitting the precincts. It'll be because they're split after we draw the lines. And they're complying with requirements that they have to. Some of that cannot be avoided on their part. It's just the nature of one person, one vote, that it would an equal representation in these districts. That there's some of that's not going to be able to avoid it, but we're going to do everything we can to not do it on the district we draw. But at this time, the chair, I will call this public hearing of the Joint Reapportionment Committee, Joint Congressional Redistricting Committee to order, and ask our council to call the roll of the members present.
Thank you. Mr. Beckett.
Here.
Mr. Blackman. Mr. Brown. Mr. Eubanks. Mr. Ford. Mr. Mangold.
Here.
Mr. Reed.
Here.
Mr. Shanks.
Here.
Mr. Taylor. Mr. White. Mr. Kirby.
Here.
Mr. Bryan.
Here.
Mr. DeBar. Mr. Harkins.
Here.
Mr. Hobson.
Here.
Mr. Parker. Mr. Simmons.
Here.
Mr. Tate.
Here.
Ms. Turner Ford. Mr. Wiggins.
Here.
All right, and thank you, council. Just want to remind you that we do not have to have a quorum to take testimony. The roll is taken just for the purpose of documenting who is present. We have members from all over the state, and we're doing these hearings all over the state, so some people choose not to attend a hearing that may be a long ways from their residence. We have members of this committee and members of the legislature that are watching the proceedings tonight, so they are paying attention to what's going on. Everyone just might not be here. In addition to the members of the committee, I know that we have other members of the House and Senate that are here with us tonight. I want to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves.
Good evening to the
meeting. My name is O'Meara Scott. I represent Jones, Jasper, and Clark counties. And welcome to the Pineville, Jamie.
Representative Larry Byrd, representing House District 104 as East Forest County. Thank you.
John Polk, Senate District 44.
All right, I don't see anyone. Oh, okay, yeah, gentlemen? Sorry, I can't see up there.
Representative Kevin McCarty, I represent North Lamar County, that's District 101. Representative James Cohen, I represent South Lamar County, Northern County, District 106.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the,
Percy Watson, represent District 103, Hattiesburg, Farms County.
sorry, Mr. Chairman, I didn't see you come in there. Do we have anybody else? Missy, okay.
Missy McGee, I represent District 102, which is Central Hattiesburg.
All right. Do we have anyone else?
I'm built strong tonight.
Exactly.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. On my drive up, I did have an opportunity to talk to Senator Warren Burnett, who wanted the committee as well as the public to know that he would have been here, but he is in fact recovering from COVID right now, so he's in isolation.
All right, thank you for saying that. And we have members that for various reasons cannot be here. There's either the illness or illness in the family or just other obligations. In addition to our members, I want to thank our staff, both the LBO staff and the peer staff for their work in not only making these meetings possible, but in the preparation of the documents that you have and that we will have going forward. And I want to thank USM for providing this place for us to meet. It's awful gracious of them to make this available to us. And almost, I guess all of our hearings around the state have been held either at our universities or our community colleges or branches of the university. So I want to thank the entire system for their cooperation. And I think it's appropriate that public hearings should be in these public institutions. So we thank you for that. As we get started, our staff has gone through the transcripts of the meetings that were done back in 2010, and this is the 8th meeting in our series of 9 that we're going to have this time. And they've kind of reviewed the commonly presented themes in all these meetings and concerns that people might have, and they've been gracious enough to give me those, and so I'm going to address a few of those as before we get started, before I open it up and allow y'all to ask whatever it is to make whatever statement it is that you would like to make. A few of the things are, why do we redistrict? And, that seems very fundamental to those of us, but, it's maybe not so obvious to the public that's not as involved with it. But just want to point out that both our federal constitutional requirements of one person, one vote requires us to redistrict both our congressional districts and our legislative districts every 10 years. So following the census, the federal constitution requires us to do that. And also, in addition to that, Section 254 of our state constitution of 1890 requires that we redistrict the legislature. So it's not a matter of choice, or it's not optional that we do this. It's a requirement that we do it because of things that will become obvious if you take a look at the maps. So, it's often asked when did we begin redistricting, and that has started already. Redistricting actually began with the census and people responding to the census, because that's what it's all based on, the census data. And so around July 1st, there was an organizational meeting of the committee, and then we started this series of hearings, and we started them earlier this month, before we actually received the formal final data, and we started with estimates. And you might ask, why did we actually start with the estimates? One is, there are a couple of reasons. One is the estimates have been used in the past, and it really provides us kind of a roadmap as to what parts of the state of gained population, what parts of the state of lost population. So at this very beginning stage where we're at redistricting, it provided us with the information that we needed. Last week, another set of data was given that was really is the more accurate. It is the number. Now, the federal government reserves the right on September 30th, they will send us another set of numbers, and it may change, but probably will not change from the ones we received last week. There are a couple things that could happen where they might have to move small amounts of population around, but for 99.9% of the people, there would not be any type of change at all. And so, but we had to go ahead and get started because of qualifying deadlines our next year for our congressional districts. So efforts of congressional redistricting will come first and will occur during this fall. So the fall of this year, we will be working on the legislature during the months of the 2022 legislative session. And so first we're going to do the congressional so they can qualify in January. Then we're going to do the legislative districts because we don't qualify for the following year, so we have a little more time on the legislative districts. But because of that time crunch, we had to go ahead and get started. You may ask that because of population shifts, we're going to face challenges. I think that anyone that gives serious consideration knows that even though our state population did really shift a lot, we got 6,000 less people than we had, with almost 3 million people. That's a very minor change. It's going to make a very small difference in the number of people in our House districts and the number of people in our Senate districts. But within that, people moved a lot. People just don't live in the same places they did. So, and because of the requirements that we have, the district will change a great deal. And for your area lost population or gained population presents unique challenges on either end. And we're sitting here today in an area that both has counties with gained and lost population. So we're going to have some of both. It's not, we were on the Gulf Coast yesterday, and all the counties gained population, basically. But most of the places, and we've gone to a few places that were all the counties lost population. But most of them are like this, where you have some that gain and some that lose. The exhibits that are set up, the posters outside this auditorium in the hall, will give you an idea of the areas that gain population and lost population. Some were relatively the same. Some lost a lot. Some gained. I know in the House, we had one district gain almost 49% in 10 years. We had one district that lost 21% in 10 years. So as you can tell, there was some districts, there was a great deal of movement. We had certain parts of the state that lost a lot more than other parts of the state. But it only had a few pockets of growth, primarily in what you would call more suburban areas. And so, but they all present problems that we'll have to deal with. We're presenting this data, like I said, because we had to start out with the estimates, and now we got more accurate information. How many members of the public participate in the process? There are several ways I want to inform you that members of the public can participate. One is by discussing their concerns at this hearing. We're here to hear your concerns. This evening we will listen to any matter that you wish to bring to our attention about how and where we will draw congressional and legislative districts. We'll let members members of the public are to know that need to sign a card with your name on the card. The staff has the cards. They have them on the outside. If for some reason that you decide you want to speak or you didn't get a card, just let the staff know, and they have the cards, and be sure to do that. And that's just simply because they bring them to me, and I won't be able to call on people in the order they were turned in. And so that's the reason we ask to have them identified. Another thing, you can submit your suggestions to this committee in writing or by email. You may think of something when you go home, you may not be prepared, you may have more detailed information, you may have some kind of follow-up comment. You can submit it either by mail or email, and I'll provide that information in just a minute. You can take advantage of the opportunity to use the committee's public access computer terminals. There'll be a time set aside that the public can actually come in and work on these terminals. And here, in these hearings, what kind of concerns does the committee need to hear from the public? And basically, just anything that is your concern. It's probably not going to be the first time we've heard that concern for a lot of them. It may be something that we've heard each one of the hearings, but that doesn't matter. It's your concern, it's your concern. Just an example, some things that people bring up. We have Voting Rights Act concerns. We have concerns about splitting of precincts. We are concerned about splitting of municipalities. We have talked about districts that are odd-shaped. Just in short, we hear a variety of concerns that individuals have. As a reminder, the rules of the House govern joint committees and meetings, and we will handle such matters as the House will handle them. And how can members of the Public Contact Committee to provide information or to book time on the public access computers, and you can send your information by U.S. mail to Ted Booth, Staff Council, Joint Reapportionment Committee, P.O. Box 1204, Jackson, Mississippi 39215-1204, or you can send an email to ted.booth@peer.gov. And I read that out to you simply because we do have people that are watching that don't have access to these written materials that y'all were given, even though the address is on there. Some of the other people might want to use the address or something else. If you send in the comments, please provide information for the staff to follow up, such as email address or telephone number, because if they're going to get back with you, they need some way to get in touch with you. And so provide that contact information. Just a reminder, public access for congressional redistricting will commence following the delivery of the final PL-94-171 data, which should arrive at the close of September. That's going to be our final numbers that they cannot change anymore. Okay? There'll be hours to work with at that point in time. They should get here at the close of September, and the public access time will last for 3 weeks, and so that will begin 1st September, run for 3 weeks. For the legislature, it will occur after January 1, 2022, and last for 3 weeks. All right, at this time, is there anything they would like to add? All right, well, thank you. At this time, we will begin with taking the comments that we have from the public. And the first one that I received is, I'm horrible when Sawaldo, I'm sorry about that. If I butchered that, I apologize. And I would like to ask each person as you're speaking to come down to the mic That's not just for us, that's so the people watching can hear also.
Great. Am I talking into the mic?
Yes.
Here, okay?
Yes.
Great. Hi, I'm Peg Seraldo, and that handwriting is a result of 12 good years of education. Thank you for meeting our community here today. My name is Peg Seraldo. I am the president of the League of Women Voters Pine Belt. I'm a retired attorney. I live in Hattiesburg and am a registered voter. The League of Women Voters Pine Belt is a nonpartisan group that works closely with the Forest County NAACP and other nonpartisan groups to educate and work with our communities to ensure equal rights for each and every one of us. Today, I and the League of Women Voters and fellow concerned citizens are requesting from this committee that there be transparency in the redistricting process here in Mississippi. We would like the entire process to be made public. The most important issue is transparency of the redistricting maps drawn before finalizing of these maps. Currently, in the United States House of Representatives, House Bill 81 has been introduced requiring state redistricting entities, such as yourselves, to publish information regarding redistricting plans both before and after adoption of a plan, which includes maps of the congressional districts, the composition of the districts by race, language, minority groups, and political party, explanation of the entity's reasoning for adopting the plan, and any dissenting statements of the entity's members. We are requesting a public hearing and opportunity for a written public input after redistricting maps are proposed and before they are voted on. We understand that pursuant to federal and state law, these redistricting maps must be nonpartisan, must have equal rights for all citizens, each district must have equal populations, and a minimal splitting of political boundaries. It took many lawsuits for us to be here in Mississippi where we are today. We are a better state than that. We need to show our citizens through transparency that the appropriate legal redistricting map is before it's being presented to the legislature. This committee, I was mentioning before that you all are very popular on YouTube. I have seen 7 out of your 8 hearings, and they've been terrific. You've shown your intent to do right by Mississippi by taking the time to conduct these 9 hearings within a matter of 3 weeks throughout Mississippi. I understand that your staff is already working on the redistricting maps. I understand there's already been private committee meetings regarding the maps. We understand that time is of the essence. What we need now is for the citizens of Mississippi to have an opportunity to review these maps. The Pine Belt community will continue in its efforts to assist this committee in working on redistricting here in Mississippi. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Dr. Wesley?
Could have slipped that card a little lower, but I'm blessed to be here. I'm blessed that every one of y'all have taken the time, whether you quote had to or not, but you're here smiling and you're here thinking about what we're going to be talking to you about tonight. And I could say, I've been here over 40 years. I finally can say I'm not from Houston, Texas, because I've been over 40 years. But the proud thing that I can say is that I'm a retired teacher. I'm a mother of 5 adult children, 5 grandchildren. I try to stay busy with NAACP Political Action Executive Board and Executive Board of the Boy Scouts, Pineborough Area Council, and a member of the League of Women Voters, and I'll leave that where it is. But what I want to say then, more importantly, is that I love Hattiesburg and the Pine Belt, and I want to see good things happen here in Hattiesburg and the Pine Belt area. And I can trust you, I can see that you will also look forward to doing that as well, doing the best that you can for this area. I have one question, comment, I guess, not at this point in time. And what I have to ask, and again, maybe a comment as well, is this. Given the history of voter suppression in Mississippi and the weakening of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, what steps have you taken as a legislative redistricting committee to address the confidence that minority voters will have that their votes count and that they will be able to have a level of equity in voting for their candidates? And I say confidence because we all know that we can be given facts. We can look at the vaccination rates in our state and know people can be given all kinds of facts. But what health officials have seen is that you go for the community. You go for leaders in that community, pastors, teachers, to go and talk to the people, to give them more than just facts, but to give them their concerns, to give them their encouragement, to give them their, and share their faith that things can get better. So what I wanted you as a committee to look at is, again, go beyond the facts. Look at the commitment that you make from the heart. And that's all I can ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence?
Thank you. I've got some handouts here. I was going to see if I could give these to y'all. There's several. I don't have enough, but I would have provided as well. I got to keep one. This is a really crappy handout, I get that. I worked all day and did this in like 30 minutes, or 30 minutes is way too long. It didn't take me that long, but it's my favorite gerrymanders in the state of Mississippi, which, my very favorite one, if you look at the top left photo, right there in the middle, it looks like an elephant drinking the vote of East Gulfport. So basically, I just wanted to illuminate some things about these gerrymanders. If you look at the top right picture, it's the Pine Belt in Hattiesburg. Hattiesburg has 5 senators that are touching the city of Hattiesburg, taking votes out of the city of Hattiesburg in the state senate. At the same time, we have about enough people for 1 senator, right? But instead we have 0, essentially. And we have a bunch of our city just fragmented up. If you look at the last picture on the bottom right, it's Jackson. Looks like somebody just punched a mirror. And the lines just cut into the city and disenfranchise people with these lines. If you look at the bottom left, it's just a big swath in the middle of the state. There isn't a single city in Mississippi that is contained within a Senate district. They're all cut up. And I think y'all know that when people look at these maps, they know exactly what's going on. You're not fooling anybody by saying that, oh, historical lines say that we should do this or that. People know that one party is trying to dilute the vote in certain places and concentrate it in other places. And y'all have an opportunity to show people that Mississippi has changed. Not just the flag, not just the symbols that are coming down, but actually changed, and that you guys represent that change, and that y'all can do something about it. And there are 3 rules that I've put down at the bottom to help y'all, guide you through this process. That when people look at the map of Mississippi, they might say, oh, that makes sense. The first thing is that a municipality that has enough people to contain an entire district shall contain as many whole districts as its population will maintain. No dividing up big cities into fragments. Keep the cities together. A municipality, the second rule, a municipality that has fewer than the number of people for an entire district shall be contained in 1 single district whenever possible, and in districts with adjacent unincorporated areas otherwise. It should say otherwise at the end of that sentence. It doesn't. Sorry about that. I was in a hurry. The point is keep small cities within the same district, if possible. The third is unincorporated areas, even those in different counties, shall be contained in districts with other unincorporated areas whenever possible, and in districts with adjacent municipalities otherwise. The idea is that people, even across county lines that live in the rural areas outside of cities, will have more in common and need a unifying representative. As it is, I live in a district where I get to share a senator with people in Lewin, Mississippi. I don't even know. I've never even been to Lewin, Mississippi. It's nowhere near my house. We don't have things in common. And I just think that y'all can take this moment to really do something to change this map to where it makes sense. Don't think about how it will benefit your party politically. Think about how the people of the state deserve equal representation under the law and under the electoral system that y'all put into place. You have a duty, and I hope that you fulfill it to the people of Mississippi. I didn't give an introduction. My name is Matthew Lawrence. I'm an attorney here in town. Long time ago, I used to study geography here at the University of Southern Mississippi. First person I ever heard say gerrymander was Professor Mark Miller. I think he's still around. And then I studied gerrymandering quite intensively at UC Hastings when I was in law school. But obviously these aren't hard and fast rules. They aren't things that you have to do. You can throw them away, not even think about them. But I think the people of this state would appreciate it if you did consider them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tony Johnson.
Not one per city. As many as the city will maintain. So Jackson could have like 4, basically.
Good evening. My name is Tony Johnson. Here in 2 capacities. I'm a local election commissioner in Hinds County, and I also work for a nonprofit who's also nonpartisan, Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable. And we wanted to speak on the importance of fair redistricting from the standpoint of women's economic security throughout the state. Without proper redistricting, wage gaps, access to better health care, and adequate education would not be possible. So we just wanted to leave you with a few points from our standpoint why redistricting should be transparent and fair. Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable is an organization focused on civic engagement and advancing the lives of Black women and women throughout Mississippi by effective policy. Black women make up a large percentage of voters throughout the state of Mississippi. Based on the census data, the 2021 wage gap between Black women and non-Hispanic white men is 63 cents to every dollar. 49% of Mississippi women make up about 49% of the overall workforce, yet they make up nearly 2/3 of workers being paid minimum wage. We believe that fair redistricting lines will help reduce the wage gap brought about by Black women being underpaid. Again, Black women in rural districts in the state of Mississippi are more commonly single parents and heads of households, resulting in a higher need to access quality education and health care. We urge fair and transparent redistricting. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole Jordan.
I yield the floor.
Okay, thank you. Margaret Shelton.
My name is Dr. Margaret Dwight Shelton. I'm an educator, retired, and I have serious concern about the redistricting. And as some have already noted, that my concern is about gerrymandering and whether I heard about the influx, the decrease, and increase in population, but I am seriously concerned that gerrymandering will enter the picture, and I believe it is already here. My next concern is about the education of the minorities or the education of the population, and the education does not reflect the culture, the multiracial, multi-ethnic population that we have here in the state of Mississippi, and particularly in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I'm also concerned about the wages of women, as others have already stated, the fair sharing of the distribution of money received based upon the increase and decrease of population. I would like to know and get some assurance when you are doing your math about the infrastructure money that's coming to Mississippi and how it's going to be distributed and who's going to benefit from it. And as I said, the educational system in Mississippi need upgrading. It is not up to par, and in many instances it's substandard. And I can go on in terms of that. And then we have people that are elected to office, and regardless of whether they are independent, Republicans, or Democrats, they cater to those who are members of their party when they call town meetings or when they come back to inform the citizens about what is going on in Washington, what is going on in Jackson. Those of us, they do not inform us. We don't get newsletters. We don't get anything. And so this is a measure that needs to be corrected. And I hope that you're taking this very seriously about what we are saying about gerrymandering, because it already exists here. Also, in terms of some of the violence that's still going on in the state of Mississippi should also be corrected. And I have a long list, but I don't think I have time, and I don't want to take up everybody's time about this. And I, too, would like to be informed about the redistricting, and before you vote on it and before anything else happens, that we as citizens are given information in print as possible, that we may have input prior to any voting.
All right, thank you very much. Donald Bethley.
Hello, thank you for having me today. I'm Donald Bethley, and I'm here representing Black Lives Matter Mississippi, the nonprofit. I want to express some of the concerns that we have as far as transparency and the whole process, how this has gone about historically. We want as many people as possible to be involved in this process. We want it to be seen by as many people as possible. As said before by some of the people previously on this stand, some of the cities, some of the larger cities in the state were broken up unfairly and should be looked at seriously. This process dictates how we spend our money in the state. It dictates how we invest in this state. We are paying attention. The young people in this state are paying attention. Please, please make this a fair process for all of the people in Mississippi, not just a certain political party. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Rod Woolard?
Woodard.
You were close the first time.
I was right the first time.
Yes, sir, you're doing good.
Well, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, committee members, my name is Roderick Woolard. I'm a native of Hattiesburg. Served as District 4 Supervisor for Forest County since 2001. In 2005, I was the lead plaintiff on an unsuccessful challenge to the legislative redistricting plan adopted in the year 2000, from your 2000 census. Our goal pursuing the litigation was, as it is now, an effort to create a majority-minority Senate district centered in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, the second largest majority-minority community in the state of Mississippi. While the legislative redistricting plan adopted after 2010 census did create a majority-minority senatorial district, including parts of Hattiesburg, Senate District 34 was simply not what the doctor ordered from the perspective of our community. Why? Specifically, Senate District 34 was adopted and perspectives of our community, it was adopted unnecessarily diluting the voting strength of the minority voters in the city of Hattiesburg while ignoring other important traditional redistricting criteria, such as compaction, adhering to existing political boundaries, and preservation of communities of interest, and explicitly large majority-minority precincts in the cities such as the Blair Precinct, Dixie Pine Central, and the majority-influenced precincts such as Highland Park, Pinecrest, Westside were assigned to Senate District 45, carving out over a third of the black vote. The black voting age, rather, in the city. Instead of coupling all the city minority-majority precincts into one in the city of Hattiesburg in our metropolitan area, the legislature yoked our community with rural minority voters in Jasper County, 40 miles away, and 3 counties over. As a result, minority voters in Hattiesburg constitute only 22% of the Senate District 34. 34's electorate and have not been able to influence, let alone determine the election of their Senate, of their state senators. This is simply unacceptable for a community with the population of over half of the ideal Senate district size. Accordingly, please accept this letter as my formal request on behalf of the community I represent to adopt a majority-minority Senate district centered on the city of Hattiesburg, consisted by the mandate of the U.S. Constitution and traditional redistricting principles. I appreciate your time and your attention. I want to thank the committee for what they're doing, but I'm asking you here personally to right a wrong. This never should have been done 10 years ago. We went before the court and the court said, let's give the state a chance to do the right thing. The court said, let's give the state a chance to do the right thing. And this is what you came up with. I don't know which one of you or how many of you were serving at that time, but I'm asking everybody on this committee to right this wrong. I thank you for your time. I thank you for being here and all that you have put in this.
Did you say you had a handout?
Yes, sir, I do have a copy of the letter.
Would you give it to, right here on the staff on the spot? All right. Thank you. Ron Hancock.
stand back from this, there's a little bit of feedback. Can everyone still hear me like that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. We don't have microphone control. I hadn't planned to do an introduction, but I think it might be worthy at this point. My name is Ron Hancock. I'm a resident of Hattiesburg. I'm a small business owner. I have several healthcare clinics in South Mississippi, the coast, and here. So I decided where to open businesses and partner with other small business people based on demographic information, the same information that you will be using, making your decision, this big decision coming up. So I have a vested interest in our community. I was part of the brain drain that happens every generation. When you get a degree from Mississippi, you leave when you're that age. But I came back because I had an opportunity here, but I made a promise to myself that when I came back here, I was going to make a change. All the reasons I left Mississippi, the frustration I had with the status quo at the time, I was going to change that when I came back. So that's part of the reason I'm here today. That is my motivation for sharing my thoughts with you today. With respect to the redistricting as required from time to time when we have a new census and the data that you'll use, it is my hope that the newly defined districts will reflect the true demographics of the area they encapsulate. Mississippi is about 50% white and 50% non-white. When I say non-white, Americans of African descent, Asian descent, Native descent, and Latinx, and mixed race. So your demographics will show 60-40. Mixed race is always fit to a box. It's about 50-50. If you look at our elected state bodies, when assembled in Jackson, you would think that Mississippi comprises all white men with a polite margin of women and persons of color. I invite you to look around the next time you're either in session in either House or the Senate, and you'll see pretty much the same thing in either body. 70% white, 30% black. Those are the numbers. If you just count them and look at the faces on the website, that's what you're going to see. That's not reflective of the state of Mississippi. It does not reflect the population we have here. Anytime we have an organization that represents a larger body, it should be reflective of that larger body, that community. It has never been. Just because it's never been doesn't mean it always should be that way. How did it get that way? Well, it's been that way for a long time, since Reconstruction. The House, the Senate, along with local and state election officials, have done everything in their power to keep as many white people in power as possible. That is to say, to suppress the black voice. Drawing fair and reflective districts is the only way to break up this good old boy system, which has remained in power for far too long, and suppressed the voices of those who have not had representation in the state capitol and likewise in the nation. I implore you to please do the right thing. Draw the districts fairly and without prejudice. We no longer have room for prejudice in Mississippi. Thank you, committee members.
Thank you. Reverend Jimmy Richardson.
Good evening to Chairman Baker and this community, and this committee, and Dr. Jimmy Richardson. I share with the Civil Engagement Roundtable one voice, the NAACP. I am president of Pearl County NAACP, and I'm also a pastor from District 4. Senate District 47 and House of Representatives 106. My concern mirrors pretty much what everybody has said today. As we look back over history and time, there have been a great consensus. As far as our voting, from the beginning, from Reconstruction, it has been structured where we could only have a select few at the table. Even as I look around your committee tonight, that still holds true. A select few minorities are at the table. And I understand during the Obama administration, the Supreme Court struck down Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act, which stated that when you did the redistricting, that the Justice Department had to pre-clear to make sure that at least 51% your district had a minority district. Well, what that simply means, Chairman Beckett, is they gave one minority at the table. But that's still not enough to be our voice of the people that you are representing. So tonight, our concerns again mirror many of the individuals who have came before me tonight, such as Supervisor Woolard. Every 10 years, the state of Mississippi begins the redistricting process. Redistricting is one of the most critical aspects of our democracy. It determines our power as voters to elect public officials that will represent the interests of our communities. Therefore, it is important that the state of Mississippi engages in a redistricting process that is fair and transparent. The residents of Forest County here and Pearl River County, which I represent, know all too well how an unfair redistricting process contributes to voter suppression. If we are to honor our fundamental rights to participate in this political process, then districts must be drawn in accordance with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The section outlaws the development of maps that discriminate on the basis of race. That means districts should not be racially gerrymandered, stacked, packed, or cracked. We are asking this committee to comply with the federal law and to provide community stakeholders with regular updates about the redistricting process. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Minister Barber of Davenport.
Good evening. I am Minister Barbara Davenport, co-director of Countywide Family Development Center and a resident of Jones County, which lies in the 4th Congressional District. We are a member of the Mississippi Civil Engagement Roundtable, led by One Voice, which has a history of advocating for fair, transparent, and accountable redistricting practice. We appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today, and thank you for allowing us to share our position. My family and I have lived in Jones County in the community of Ford for many years, which I do understand the redistricting process is important. After all, it locks us into voting districts for the next 10 years. I also understand that if the lines are drawn unfairly, it could mean that our voice and our vote won't matter for the next 10 years. Redistricting has become a concern for me because of my commitment to my community and voting rights. I am a believer that my vote is my power. When there's a threat to that power, my vote must become my fight. Over the past 10 years, redistricting has cracked my community, impacted my family, our schools, and the surrounding communities that I share. We have streets used as dividers for voting districts. One neighbor vote at one precinct, and directly across the street, neighbors vote in a different precinct. I believe that splitting up communities of interest takes away the community's ability to work together and fight for important issues as a whole. We know that redistricting has been a tool used in the past to weaken the voting power of communities. While we have seen unfair practice when it comes to the election on the local level, I know that the federal and state lines affect us just as much. We know that voter suppression is alive. We know that Mississippi is capable of doing better to protect wrong voting, and Mississippi should do better. Thank you.
And I apologize for mispronouncing your name. All right, I thank each one of you for your comments, and I just appreciate your attendance tonight. At this time, I'd like to thank our host for providing this place. I want to ask any of the members of the committee if they have any comments they would like to make. Yeah.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would like to address something, but I have no idea how this sound system works or whether my microphone is on or off or anything. But there have been complaints tonight, and there have been complaints at other meetings about the configuration of districts which split municipalities. If you'll go back to the 1990 map, which was after the 1980 census, generally speaking, the map that was adopted, I think in 82 or thereabouts, did not split municipalities, generally followed county lines. You can't do that exactly because of population, but to a large extent it did, and you can go find that map and look at it. When I was elected to the Senate in 1983, there were 2 African American state senators out of a 52-member Senate. There were some elections, and so when 1990 rolled around, there were 4 African American senators out of a 52-member Senate. I don't have any particular idea about quotas or proportional representation or whatever, but it sure seems to me it's troubling that you would have a 52-member Senate with only 4 black members. After the census in 1990, of course, we drew lines again. We were under the Justice Department, and the Justice Department and those advocating for more African American majority districts took the position, more or less, that in order to elect an African American candidate, that it would require a Senate district that was approximately 2/3 African American. And I remember having lengthy discussions with the Justice Department and the individual from the Justice Department, and it's just impossible. What is it you want us to do? And you couldn't get an answer, except clearly they would not agree to anything without these large numbers of African Americans in a district. So in order to get those numbers, the districts were drawn, and there were insufficient number of voters in compact areas. And we had one argument in particular about the Natchez-Macomb areas. We had a Senate district in Natchez and a Senate district in Macomb. And there was an insistence on the Justice Department that a district be drawn that effectively, the only way to do what they wanted without doing it, that you would take the heavily black portions of Natchez and the heavily black portions of Macomb and connect those 2 areas with territory in between, leaving the whiter portions of Natchez and Macomb to be in another district. And some of us thought that was an unwise thing to do, but that was the demand of the Justice Department. We were told by those who were suing the state at the time that they would draw districts and they would present those districts to us, and we were required by law to adopt whatever districts they presented to us. Well, that was not the law, is not the law, and that's not what happened. But I want to emphasize that the configuration of the districts, which you see today, came about as a result of the actions after the 1990 census and the demand that we create districts with very large African American voting age populations. In 1991, which is when we got the census, when we had an election going on, we could not draw districts that got approved by the Justice Department. There was a lawsuit And ultimately, what happened was we ran in 1991 under the existing districts and had another election in 1992. Generally speaking, the Senate map that you see today is a variation on the Senate map that was drawn in 1992 in an attempt to comply with the requirements of the Voting Rights Act. And we adopted a different maps, obviously, in 2000 and 2010, and now 2020. But the configurations, all that you're seeing today, come about in large measure as a result of the effects of the efforts after the 1990 census. There have been allusions to the fact that this is something the Republican Party is doing. Well, let me tell you, the Republican Party has a lot to explain for and a lot to answer for. And we could talk about that late into the evening. However, this ain't one of them. This was not a demand of the Republican Party. I think they saw what was happening and sort of smiled to themselves. But this was a demand of people who wish to draw districts with large African American populations. And I remember distinctly being told that African American citizens of different communities were a community of interest, and that the city or county or whatever was not a community of interest. The community of interest were the African American residents wherever they happened to live. So I feel like that there needs to be some explanation of how we got the configurations that we have today, and basically that's where they came from. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Senator Wiggins, I bring you to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first will take up Senator Bryan's offer to discuss Republican and Democrat differences if you'd like to. But no, seriously, clearly over the hearings, split precincts are an issue. They've been in every one of the meetings. With the release of the data that has come out, I guess it was yesterday or 2 days ago, I think your counties and your cities are going to start looking at that closer. And I personally had, as recently as today, conversation with the county administrator in Pearl River County, who rightfully so mentioned about the issues they have with split county districts. I, of course, explained, as the chairman has said, what the state's role within the county and the city. The bottom line is it came down to it was communication is needed to do our best on the local level to prevent as many split precincts as possible. And his suggestion was to communicate with the counties, or actually had said, let them look at how they district with the new numbers, and then let us do ours. I didn't know all the logistics, but I said I think that can be solved or certainly addressed through communication. But it also, as we discussed, would be about the counties and the cities going ahead and getting started and getting it in as soon as possible. I see you nodding, which I think the earlier the better, which is what you have said, because we as the state are under a timeline. And for example, to their credit, Pearl River County said they've already started and they're going to have their districts. And I personally encourage them to go ahead and send it to us so that we can start looking at it. And we will do our best to, from our side, to minimize the split precincts and the split county districts. So I think that's important. I think that that's certainly not a partisan issue. Whether it's Republican, Democrat, or Independent, we've heard throughout the state what a problem split precincts are. And if we can, I think it's imperative upon the committee to entertain suggestions that can help minimize that. And so, just in conclusion, if the counties and the cities can get started as soon as possible, I don't know all the logistics, but they can start working and talk with us. I think the chairman would agree that we're certainly open And as council has said, the process has started and it's open to the public and open to anybody. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, let me just follow up on that. The Supervisors Association is well aware about what the problem is. And we've had discussions with them even back here at the session. But we have an extra problem this year that we normally wouldn't have. We were supposed to receive the census information April 15th. And we're still waiting on the official information. So the counties have not had the information. So they were not able to start as early. So it's going to be extremely difficult time-wise for all of them. Some of them are going to be able to, but it's going to be hard for all of them. But they know that they have committed as a group to try to work with us to minimize that.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying if they could get it started as soon as possible doing that, that makes our job that much easier, which then helps us to minimize the splits.
Ms. Senator Turner, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I really have a question that I'd like to direct to, I think it's Mr. Lawrence. As you were describing the maps that you presented, I think you referenced the rules that are listed there at the bottom. So my first question to you would be, what is the source of the rules that you're presenting for consideration by the committee this evening?
It's just me, I guess. I came up with these rules.
And it's not a trick question. I wondered if this is part of some study or this is based on your independent research.
Well, partly, and I know this isn't a very popular thing to say around here, but actually, the person who drew the California districting map actually took a class with them back in the day, and sort of these ideas from that. I disagree with them on a lot of things, like the way they treat Nancy Pelosi's district, for instance, a little messed up. But I would like to also push back a little bit on the idea that, sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Just a little bit on the idea that, oh, this is all just a result of the federal government came in and made us draw these maps. This is a compromise with the federal government to draw these maps. They didn't just come down and tell you how to draw them. The committee compromised the federal government. And I can point out specific examples of what I'm talking about. Draw your attention to the center of Wiggins District, for instance. You're telling me that splitting Pascagoula and Lost Point in half means that there's more African Americans in the district? Please, that's not true. There are other ones, like the one in East Gulfport, Joe Carter's district. There's no way that East Gulfport, combining that with Lyman area and north of I-10, means that there's going to be more African Americans in the district. That's just wrong. And so, whether the history of it is more muddled than maybe I'll let on in my presentation earlier, whether or not it's more complicated, we can look at specific examples. Nobody in their right mind could look at the map of Jackson and say that that map is drawn to concentrate African American votes. Please, nobody can believe it.
Let me ask you one more question. In your research, have you also formulated a proposed map of Senate districts or House districts in the state of Mississippi, or for the state of Mississippi?
Well, as much as I would love to do that, I currently don't have access to GIS technology, although I think the geography department is what it's here, maybe I can use it. I also have a full-time job, and it's hard to come up with things like that. But, hey, I mean, don't.
I was just wondering about the extent of your, this seems very, this just seems very detailed what you presented, and I was just wondering about the extent of your research. Thank you.
I would love to continue to discuss it. I appreciate it much.
Do we have any other committee member that has a question? All right. Once again, I want to thank each one of you for being here, and I'm sure some of these conversations will continue afterwards. I want to thank USM for graciously hosting us this evening, providing this place. Thank our staff once again for all the work in preparation of this meeting, and just remind the public that we're just at the beginning of this process, and that you may provide any comments or suggestions, proposed plans by mail, and you can mail those to Ted Booth, South Council Joint Reapportionment Committee, P.O. Box 1204, Jackson, Mississippi 39215-1204, or you can email them to ted.booth@peer.ms.gov. And like I said before, please put your contact information on there so they can follow up with any comments if you send them. And if there's nothing else, then this committee will stand adjourned.